I was sipping my morning coffee, the sunlight spilling across the marble countertop, when the doorbell rang. My silk blouse caught on the edge of the chair as I rose, and I felt that familiar twinge of anticipation, half curiosity, half dread. Usually, packages were predictable. Amazon deliveries, a flower subscription I barely remembered signing up for. But this one was different. It was wrapped in soft, elegant paper, the kind my parents always used when they wanted to make a statement. I stared at it for a moment, my fingers hovering over the ribbon. My daughter, Lily, came running in, her little sneakers squeaking on the hardwood floor. She tilted her head, eyes wide, sensing the tension in the air. "Mom, what is it?" she asked. Her voice was innocent, but I felt a knot tighten in my chest. I hadn't heard from my parents in months. Not really. Calls went unanswered, texts ignored, the kind of distance that speaks louder than words. And yet, here they were, sending something to Lily, as if they could bypass me by giving her a gift. My mind raced. Was it thoughtful? Or was it a reminder of all the things I had tried to leave behind? I picked it up carefully, feeling the weight of history in my hands. The paper was smooth, almost luxurious, but there was something in the stiffness of it that made my heart skip. Lily's small hand reached out, brushing mine, her breath soft and expectant. "Mom, what is this?" I swallowed hard. I didn't know yet. I remember the day everything changed, the day I first realized that family love wasn't unconditional. I was 23, freshly graduated, full of dreams bigger than my small hometown could contain. I had just told my parents that I wanted to move to New York to chase a career in design, a career they didn't understand, a life they didn't approve of. "You're throwing everything away," my mother said, her voice tight, eyes sharp. She clutched her pearls as if they could hold her together, as if my ambition threatened to unravel her carefully ordered world. My father didn't even look at me. He just shook his head slowly, the kind of silent judgment that cuts deeper than any words. "You'll regret this," he said, finally, and I felt the sting in my chest like a paper cut I couldn't ignore. I stood there, hands trembling, feeling small in the dining room that had always felt like home, but now felt like a cage. My throat tightened, my heart pounding as I realized they weren't going to support me. Not in the way I needed. I could either bow my head and stay, living their idea of a perfect life, or step into the unknown and risk everything. It was my grandmother who found me later that night, sitting on my childhood bed, tears soaking the pillow. She didn't try to fix it. She just handed me a small, worn leather journal. "Write your own story, Anna," she said softly, brushing my hair back. "It won't be easy, but it will be yours." Her words settled over me like a warm blanket. I clutched that journal, as if it were a lifeline. I knew then that my future wasn't going to wait for their approval. I would forge my own path, make my own mistakes, and claim every victory as mine. That night, I packed my things quietly, careful not to wake my parents, and for the first time in my life, I felt a thrill mixed with fear, the intoxicating feeling of independence. As I locked the door behind me, I glanced back once. The house looked smaller somehow, and I realized that leaving didn't just mean walking out. It meant leaving the weight of their expectations, the sting of their disapproval, and stepping fully into the life I was meant to build. New York was nothing like I had imagined, and everything I had feared. The streets were alive with a kind of chaos that thrilled me and terrified me in equal measure. I rented a tiny apartment above a bakery in Brooklyn, the kind where the smell of fresh bread seeped through the walls and made mornings feel almost magical. I had my grandmother's journal tucked under my arm like a shield, a reminder that I could create my story even when the world seemed indifferent. The first months were brutal. I took odd design jobs, freelance logos, small boutique interiors, anything that would pay the rent. Some clients questioned my age, others my experience, and every rejection felt like a personal verdict. There were nights I sat on the floor of my apartment, laptop open, coffee cold, hands trembling as doubt crept in. "Maybe they're right," I whispered to myself. "Maybe I'm not cut out for this." And then, slowly, the tide began to turn. I met Evelyn, a seasoned interior designer with a studio in Manhattan. She saw what I didn't yet see in myself. Potential. Anna, she said one afternoon as we examined a project blueprint, you have an eye that people pay for. Stop underestimating it. Her belief ignited something in me I hadn't felt in years. Confidence. With Evelyn's guidance, I started landing bigger clients. My first solo project, a loft in Soho, was a disaster at first. Budget overruns, miscommunications, sleepless nights. But when the final reveal happened, the client's eyes lit up with awe. I remember standing there, hearing the praise, and feeling my own heart swell, not for recognition, but for the proof that I could do this on my own terms. I learned to navigate the city, the business, and my own insecurities. Every small win, first profitable sale, first major design feature published, first invitation to showcase my work, became a quiet victory, a secret I didn't yet share with my family. I avoided social media posts about my achievements, letting the world believe I was just another struggling artist, while slowly, methodically, I built a life of real independence. Lily was born during this time, and she became both a challenge and a blessing. Nights spent rocking her to sleep became moments of reflection, teaching me patience and resilience I hadn't realized I possessed. I wanted her to grow up in a world where women could chase dreams unapologetically, where success didn't require sacrificing your soul. The leather journal from my grandmother still sat on my desk, now filled with sketches, client notes, and the occasional line of reflection. Every morning, I'd glance at it, remembering her words. Write your own story. And I was. Every step, every sleepless night, every doubt conquered. It was my story, and no one else's approval could define it. The knock at the door startled me. I wasn't expecting anyone, especially not my parents. I had warned Lily that today might be quiet, a regular morning of pancakes and coloring books. But now, standing in the doorway, were my mother and father, both stiff with expectation and carrying the faint scent of perfume and cologne I hadn't smelled in years.
Mom? Dad?
I asked, my voice calm but carrying the subtle weight of curiosity and caution. Lily clung to my leg, peeking around me with wide, innocent eyes. I offered them a polite smile, inviting them in without a word about the life they assumed I had. They stepped inside, and I led them through the apartment. Small though it was, it had touches that reflected both comfort and ambition. Custom art prints I had commissioned, sleek shelving filled with design books, my grandmother's leather journal lying open on the coffee table. Their eyes darted from piece to piece, expressions flickering between curiosity and the first hints of unease. Anna, my mother finally said, her voice a mixture of caution and incredulity. We just wanted to bring something for Lily. She held out a gift bag, carefully wrapped in the kind of paper I remembered from childhood. I nodded, silently gesturing for Lily to open it. Lily's small hands fumbled with the ribbon, and when she lifted the lid, she froze. I could see the wordless shock spread across her face, the same shock I had felt so many years ago when I realized the weight of my parents' expectations. Inside was a delicate, antique doll set, beautiful but oddly cold. What is this? Lily whispered, eyes wide. The room went silent, and I realized my parents were watching us, expecting awe, gratitude, even tears. Instead, there was a pause, a beat of realization. I stepped closer to Lily, crouching so our eyes met. It's a gift, I said gently, but it's not what we need to define us. Then I turned to my parents, letting my voice carry calm authority. You've always seen me as the child who needed guidance, who needed your protection, but that's not who I am anymore. Their expressions shifted, disbelief, hesitation, and then recognition began to surface. I gestured around the apartment, letting them absorb the details, the carefully curated art, my awards on the shelf, the contracts and client letters subtly displayed. I run my own studio now, I said, my voice steady. I'm not just working freelance. I own my business, I manage my team, and I support my daughter in a life built on my own terms. My father's jaw tightened. My mother's eyes shimmered with something I hadn't expected, pride mingled with guilt. We didn't realize, my mother murmured. I smiled softly, a mixture of warmth and resolve. That's because you've never truly seen me. But Lily does. And that's enough. For the first time in years, the room was quiet, not with tension, but with acknowledgement. The past, the expectations, the judgments, the assumptions was no longer in control. I was here, fully present, fully powerful, and fully myself. After the initial shock settled, I realized something important. This was no longer about proving myself. It was about setting boundaries, establishing respect, and offering them a choice, to engage with us on my terms or to remain in the distance they had chosen for so long. I took a slow breath, letting my gaze sweep over my parents. "I want you both to understand something," I said, my voice calm but firm. "This isn't about revenge. It's about accountability and growth. If you want to be part of Lily's life, and mine, you need to meet certain conditions." My father looked as if I'd just spoken a foreign language. My mother's fingers twisted nervously, a silent sign she was bracing herself. "First," I continued, "I want honesty. No more pretending to support me when you don't. If you can't celebrate my achievements genuinely, you won't be allowed to influence Lily's understanding of success. She deserves authenticity, not performative approval." I could see them processing each word. I waited, letting the weight of it sink in before moving to the next. "Second, both of you need to respect boundaries. That means no unsolicited advice on my career, my choices, or my home. We live our lives with intention now, and intrusion will not be tolerated." I paused, my eyes softening. "Third, I want effort. If you're going to be part of our lives, you must actively participate. Spend time with Lily, learn what she loves, share in her joys and struggles. But this comes without judgment or criticism, ever." My mother's lips trembled. My father's gaze dropped, but I could see the faint spark of understanding beginning to emerge. I pressed on, finally, growth. Each of you must confront what held you back, the habits or judgments that damaged your relationships. Seek change, even if it's uncomfortable. If you can do that, there's room here. If not, you stay outside the door, and that's fine too. The room was quiet. I let them absorb the weight of these conditions. Then I softened my tone, leaning closer, letting the warmth I still carried for them shine through. "I love you both. But love is not enough anymore. Respect and effort matter just as much. Lily deserves that. I deserve that. And I will no longer settle for less." For the first time, I felt the balance shift. This was no longer me bending under old patterns of guilt or fear. I was offering them a chance, yes, but on terms that honored my growth, my independence, and the life I had built. I watched as the tension in their shoulders eased slightly. I didn't expect perfection. I expected effort. And effort was something they could choose to give or not. The power had shifted. I was no longer the child waiting for permission to exist. I was the woman shaping the rules, defining the boundaries, and determining the rhythm of our lives. For the first time in years, I felt calm, not just calm, but whole. And as I looked down at Lily, playing with a doll set that now seemed less like a gift and more like a symbol, I knew this was the life I had fought for. Weeks passed, and slowly, things began to shift. My parents showed up not because they were obligated, but because they chose to. They asked questions, listened, laughed with Lily, and for the first time, their presence didn't carry the weight of judgment. Change wasn't instant, but it was happening, small and deliberate, like sunlight creeping through a window at dawn. Lily's laughter filled the apartment one evening as my mother tried, awkwardly but earnestly, to braid her hair. My father, sitting nearby, complimented a design sketch Lily had drawn, something he would have dismissed before. And in those moments, I realized that growth wasn't perfection. It was effort, consistency, and the courage to step beyond old habits. I reflected on the journey I had taken. The fear, the sleepless nights, the heartbreak, and the relentless push to carve my own path. Every moment of struggle had been worth it. I had learned that independence was not just about financial success or career milestones. It was about emotional resilience, clarity, and the ability to define my own boundaries. On my desk sat the leather journal my grandmother had given me so many years ago. I opened it, running my fingers over the worn pages, seeing my younger self's doubts, my sketches, my triumphs. Her words echoed again in my mind. Write your own story. I smiled, knowing that I had done exactly that. I had written a life that was true to me, full of love, authenticity, and power. That night, I tucked Lily into bed. Her small hand reached for mine, and she whispered, "Mom, thank you for always protecting me, even from things I didn't understand." I kissed her forehead, feeling a swell of pride and love that I hadn't thought possible before I embraced my own strength. As I closed the door to her room and looked out the window at the city lights, I realized something profound. Life doesn't reward compliance. It rewards courage, resilience, and the willingness to honor yourself. I had stepped out of the shadows of expectation, and I had brought those I loved along, on their own terms. I took a deep breath, letting the night air fill me with calm certainty. This is my life, my story, my rules. And in that moment, I understood fully that the woman I had become, strong, independent, and compassionate, was exactly who I was always meant to be.